Welcome to the Power Lunch live on LinkedIn. LinkedIn Live's new platform. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program Monday through Friday around 12 noon. If the technology gods let us get the program on the air at the right time. Today they did, so we're happy. We talk to today's thought leaders on this program, today's CEOs, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work in the world to make a difference and to make us better. That's the whole point of the show. We want to learn from them. We want to learn about their secrets to success. We want to learn about the things that they do that can really help us. The fun part about the show, there are two things that I really love about the show, is that it's interactive. We can answer your questions live on the air. So make sure that you ask them. Make sure that you put them on social media so that we can actually take those questions and get the answers that you want to get to. That's really important. And it's one of the best ways for us to know that we're making a difference. Now, the other fun part I think that's interesting is that we simulcast this not only on LinkedIn, but we stream it on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all with the help of Social Live in that platform. Now, if you like the program, give it a like or share. Let the people in your network benefit from these conversations. I think that's really important, and it helps us grow the audience, obviously. Now, my promise to you is to bring you the very best. I think we've done that today. I'm really excited to chat with somebody from someone who is from my neck of the woods in South Carolina originally. Stephen Lovegrove. He's America's life coach. He is the go-to coach for top entrepreneurs, celebrities, and global leaders looking for help in becoming better leaders and better at what they do. He's been featured pretty much everywhere, NBC, MTV, to name just a couple. He's the author of How to Find Yourself, Love Yourself, and Be Yourself. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy Power Lunch to everybody. Happy Friday to those who are here live, and hello to everybody watching later on.
I love it. I appreciate you joining us today. This is the conversation I've wanted to have for a while because you've got a unique story that I think is really interesting. And I mean, how did you get from where you started and your struggles and your story, which I want you to talk about a little bit, to being a life coach? And how did you sort of discover that as a calling or as a gift that you have to help people?
Yeah, what's interesting about that question is I think a lot of people look at their past as something that they need to overcome to get where they are today or where they want to go. And that's fine, if that's your paradigm, but I don't actually view my past that way. I actually believe my past perfectly set me up for the work that I do today and the rest of my life. So for those who don't know me or my story, I grew up in a fundamentalist religious cult in the Southeast. And I always say my childhood, more than anything else, taught me how to be afraid. We were afraid of everything. Honestly, Rhett, we were afraid of God, but also afraid of Satan and afraid of sex and money and Democrats. And I mean, you name it, we were afraid of it all. And ultimately, as I got older, I realized we were afraid of ourselves. You know what I mean? Underneath all that fear. And so that was my childhood up until I was 18 years old. And obviously growing up in that environment as a gay man who figured that out when I was 12 years old was not necessarily the easiest of childhoods. And so at 18 years old, I get kicked out of the house. My life starts over. And I have to figure out, where do we go from here? Who am I? What do I believe? And what do I want to do with the rest of my life? So all through college, I spent 4 years in therapy, which was definitely helpful to me at the time. And all through that process, I was trying to answer these big questions. And literally, it felt like I was rebuilding from square one. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people who come out of such an extreme background, you start from scratch is what it feels like. So I'm answering these questions for myself, working through all of this. And in the process, I come across a life coach in New York who, in just a few conversations, really changed everything for me. And that is what introduced me to this world, to this field, and to the fact that coaching conversations have the ability to really powerfully move people forward. So, I wouldn't have chosen it at the time, but the way my journey played out forced me to kind of have an awakening and reckon with all of that at a very young age. And whether somebody is 20 or 40 or 60 or any age going through that process, like I said, I think my story really set me up to support people in their moments.
What part does the spiritual stuff still play a role in your life, or does it?
It does for me. I have a very personal relationship with God that I would say is outside of, most traditional organized religion. But I would also say it plays a huge part for me personally, and it plays a huge part in the work that I do, because something I talk about a lot is this idea of God trauma. And it's funny, I threw that term out there on social media one day just because it's what came to me in the right. No, and to my knowledge, there's no one else using that particular term. But I threw it out one day, and my audience responded to it in a way I could never have believed. And over 6 years now of working with people, I've seen so many people have this issue. And what I would describe God trauma as is, you grew up with one set of beliefs being handed to you, right? And as you got older, you outgrew that. Like, something about the understanding you were raised with no longer resonates, right? But for a lot of people, something got deconstructed, but they never replaced it, and they never healed it, and they never figured out what is true for me now. And so you end up, to use a very recent example, I had a client the other day tell me he subconsciously believes that the universe might be punishing him. And I said, isn't it interesting? You claim that you don't have all these old God beliefs anymore, but now we've just transferred it over here. And so now we think the universe is punishing us. We got to do better than this. We got to upgrade some of these beliefs. So I think it's been a huge thing for me to find a spirituality and a spiritual practice that works for me. But also, I help many clients do the same, not trying to get them all to end up in the same place, but to help them heal their God trauma and get to an understanding of God that works for them.
What was the process for you to sort of take that past, right? I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but what was the process for you in taking that past and sort of saying, okay, that's not going to define my future. I'm not going to let it get in the way of who I am and what I want to do and where I want to be in life. I mean, you said you went through, while you were in college, you went through therapy and things. Was that where you sort of started to begin to understand that past and sort of how to use it to help you be where you and who you wanted to be? I mean, what was that process?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a couple of stages to the process, because there is a point at which you've got to talk through it. You've got to express the stuff that's been inside of you for so long. You have to feel the things that you were unwilling to feel. There's a step in the process in which all of that is necessary, right?
Right.
But then I think there's another step in the process where you realize the past is no longer here, and I don't have to live this story again and again and again for the rest of my life. And so honestly, for me, and again, I have nothing bad to say about therapy, but for me, kind of the transition from therapy to coaching was, I processed the past, I felt my way through it, I talked about it a lot, and then there came a point where I had to recognize you don't actually have to live in relation to the trauma for the rest of your life. And that's where coaching helped me pivot and transition into, so now what do we want to create? Right. And, there are 40, 50, 60 plus year olds who are still living in relation to the trauma of the past. And I just don't believe that's where we were meant to spend the rest of our lives.
No, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you you talked about it until you couldn't talk about it anymore. And then you realize.
Well, and until I realized we were going in circles, right. You know what I mean? I think there's a point at which you recognize, I've looked at my mommy issues, I've looked at my daddy issues, I've looked at my childhood wounds. And at some point, we don't need to rehash this again. We need to move forward and recognize that's not here and present in the now.
Right. And it actually, to me, it's a guide for what not to do and the kind of life I don't want for the people I'm with, the friends, the family members, the loved ones. I mean, to me, it's a very powerful reminder of what you don't want. And I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you can know where you've come from without feeling defined by it. And I think that is the key. There's nothing wrong with knowing where you've come from. But I heard TD Jakes say where you're going is much more important than where you've come from. And I really believe that.
It's just not living in the past. That's plain and simple, right? Yeah. I think what I want to sort of get to a little bit is what is life coaching? Because coaching is this really broad, there's a coach on every corner now, essentially for just about everything. But I want to define a little bit, if you can, what is life coaching and what is it that you really deal with the most with your
Sure. The way I like to explain what I do to people is I help my clients work on themselves and change their lives from the inside out. So, where I like to begin is you are the common denominator in all areas of your life, right? You are the common denominator in your marriage, in your workplace, in your company, your business, your family. Mm-hmm. You bring you to all of those areas, right? Right. So a typical client of mine will work together one session a week, say, and they are working on themselves with the understanding that when I change from within, it spills over into all these areas of my life because I am the common denominator. And so, my primary groups of clients are entrepreneurs and entertainers, and it's been that way from the beginning. And from the beginning, I've said, to people in Hollywood, you've got a personal trainer and you've got somebody managing your finances and you've got a vocal coach or an acting coach, but who is supporting the inside of you, right? The part of you that's not just dependent on your talent or your skills or your hustle, but who is supporting the deepest level of you? And to me, that's what life coaching is there to support.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I use that same analogy. You've got a trainer and you've got, Olympic athletes have nutritionists and they have technical coaches. And I think that we could all benefit from having somebody that helps us with our blind spots and see the things that we don't want to see or don't want to acknowledge, or because we can't be our best unless we've sort of see all of our flaws and we acknowledge those and we try to work on those daily. What are some of the common things that you see in your coaching? I mean, what are there, or is everyone different? I mean, but what are some of the commonalities that you see with things people want to work on?
Sure. Well, everyone is different, but there are, what's funny is our fear and our limiting beliefs and our harmful patterns are not as unique, perhaps, as our brain would like for us to believe that they are. And so there are commonalities. And I think people often come to me with some level of success already, right? But there's a couple of problems going on. And so I'll just list through them real quick. The first one is I'm successful on the outside, but I am a wreck within. And so, here I am, highest income year ever, just won the award I've been waiting for my whole life, etc. And I don't feel the way I want to feel. And so how do I reconcile that? And how do I get to a place where my success actually feels good? That's a huge category, right? Another one is people plateauing, some level of success, but they're worried that it's fading away and they don't know how to continue it, or step into what the new chapter of success looks like. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
And also just, if success isn't sustainable, it's very stressful. And so a lot of people come to me because things are going very well, and I'm terrified that it's all about to fall apart. And so, I think the commonality across the board is people are coming to me with success that they want to be meaningful and fulfilling and continuous and sustainable. And that is a lot of the work that we do, is setting you up to be able to live in the success and not sabotage it.
What is how do you get, I guess, how do people get to those results? Is it, I know in a lot of my coaching, it's a process, and it takes months of changing habits and really working on, for in the business side, it's putting this process in place, or it's doing. But so how do you? Is it when you're doing that personal coaching and that personal work? Is it habit change a lot of the time, or is it thought change? How do you? What is it? What does it look like?
Well, I think it's a couple of things.
If I'm scared that my success is not going to last, how do I fix that?
Okay, well, specific to that scenario, usually the problem there is people's sense of identity. So because you operate in a business space, we'll use a money kind of heavy example here.
Great example. That's a perfect.
Right. There's a lot of people who in the last 1, 3, maybe 5 years have made more money than they've ever made in their life, right? Certainly in the online business space, it is more possible to do so than ever. You certainly understand that. And yet there's a lot of people where their internal sense of identity doesn't match up with the amount of money in their account or with their current income reports. And so, to put it frankly, there's a lot of people who have a bunch of new money and still see themselves as a poor person, a broke person, a struggling person on the inside. And so they haven't synced that up, right? And so what you have is this very specific kind of imposter syndrome where they're waiting to be found out, waiting for the money to run out, waiting for it all to fall apart, because they still don't see themselves as a wealthy person that gets to make and keep money. Right. So especially in the I have success, but I'm worried it's all going to fall apart situations, we've got to look at that sense of identity, because if you haven't upgraded that, here's what I always come back to. Your reality is always going to reset to who you believe that you are. Right. So if you notice a pattern that you can create something for a time, but then it always seems to reset, look for this, because what it's resetting to is who you really believe that you are at the deepest level.
That I like. That makes sense to me. And it comes down. You don't want them to lose some of that, right? To me, some of that is that loss, or that potential loss, or the understanding that it can all go away, also keeps you really sharp and focused on keeping that activity and moving that activity or that business or whatever, keeping sharp and focused and hungry, I guess, a little bit. But I understand what you're saying. You're saying that people, they do need to change their mindset.
This is a very nuanced conversation that I'm happy to have, because from an energetic standpoint, which is how I look at things, it actually benefits you to normalize something in your life, right? I always tell this story. I had a client one time who had a huge deal with Forbes. And the first day that she went to their headquarters in New York to film some stuff, she messaged me and she said, "Stephen, I'm confused because this isn't tripping me out the way I thought it would. And I'm at Forbes, and this is a really big deal, and I should be feeling a certain way, and I don't." And I said to her, the reason it's not tripping you out is because you have gotten to a point where you've normalized this. So it actually feels correct and this doesn't mean that you can't be grateful. This doesn't mean you're taking it for granted. But I said, you've actually done the work. So you believe that you deserve to be at Forbes. And from my perspective, Rhett, that is a good thing, not a bad thing that she normalized it. So I think the key is normalizing it doesn't mean you've taken it for granted or you're not grateful. We got to find a way to normalize it, but still always stay on the cusp and always be moving forward. That's the sweet spot we want to be in.
Yeah, that's, I guess you said it so much better than I did. I think that.
Well, I just like having this conversation because there's a lot of ideas out there that sound good, but aren't very empowering, right? So I see on Instagram all the time, the people love to say, work like you could always be broke. And I don't actually think that's a healthy mindset. How about we normalize the good and stay hungry and inspired and keep moving forward? But let's not always be ready to be broke again.
No, I mean, realize that if you don't stay sharp, you don't stay focused, you don't stay hungry, that it can all go away. But you got to believe that you deserve to be there, that you know the work, that you're an expert here, that you deserve it, right? Because you've worked for it and you've created opportunities. Right.
And that it's not a stroke of random luck. Right. Like, if you created success, and hopefully if you had good support in your life, so you know what created the success, then you can do it again. Right. And we all know people who have had something completely fall apart and they started over and rebuilt it. I want my clients to know you could do that if you had to. You created it once, you could create success again. We don't need to worry that it's all going to disappear and we're not going to know what to do.
And we also have to know that the ebb and flow of things, right? I mean, we're going to have up and down years, and we're going to have, that's just that's life. And it's going to take constant work and take constant effort to maintain what you've built. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, I know you have to hustle every day. It doesn't matter how big you become or how big your profile becomes or how big of an influencer you become, you still have to hustle every day.
Well, and I would say this on that point, I think there was a movement, and maybe it's dying out a little bit, but there was a movement for a while where everybody just wanted everything to be passive, right? I want to get it all set up and automated and streamlined and passive, and then I'm just going to sit on the beach. And what I would say is, if the thing you're building, you don't actually want to show up for every day, you might be building the wrong thing. And honestly, that's a lot of what I've helped people do is they've built a business that now feels like a prison, which means they didn't build the right thing or they didn't build it the right way, because you should want to show up for what you've created. Of course, we all have our hard days, but by and large, you should want to show up for your creation every day.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because if you don't, what are you doing, right?
What are you doing? Right. And if you don't want fluctuation, I told a client this the other day, if you don't want up and down numbers and you prefer it to be the same, may I suggest 9-to-5 jobs where that salary is locked in. Otherwise, be okay with fluctuating numbers as an entrepreneur. It's really okay.
It is. And you have to learn to live with that, but and it's not for everybody. I mean, that's the other realization, right? That sometimes you are in the wrong place, and that's okay. You have the power to make a change and do something that you get excited about. I mean, I have that conversation pretty regularly with entrepreneurs who are at wit's end, right? And it's time. Sometimes it's just time to move on.
Well, and I'm glad that you're spreading that message, because there are people out there that would lead you to believe everybody should be an entrepreneur. And I've said from the beginning, I don't feel that way. I don't feel that everyone should be an entrepreneur. And especially, I'm even more passionate about this, I really don't feel that everybody should be a coach. And, you said before we started filming today, you said there's a lot of people that have confusion or maybe have something negative in their mind about coaching. I think a lot of the reason for that is there's a whole lot of people coaching because somebody told them this is an easy way to make money and they should never be coaching. Right. And, I don't ever feel threatened by that, because I think when you've been in this industry long enough, you realize that the people who are legit at what they're doing always become clear over time. You know what I mean? And for our company, here we are 6 years later, 300 testimonials online. The record is pretty clear. But there's a lot of people out there. And can I recommend, if you don't know that you really want to coach, don't coach. And not everybody should be an entrepreneur. And maybe this is an unpopular message, but I really don't believe that everybody needs to be in that space.
If you were an individual and you were looking for a coach, what would you look for in a coach, and what questions would you ask? How would you sort of get to who the right person was?
Well, that's a good question. And for the record, I do currently have a coach, and I believe in having support. You know, they always say doctors still go to doctors, dentists still go to the dentist. Right. And I obviously am in this process, not just from the other perspective. You know, this might sound woo-woo to some people, but I really swear by trust the energy that you feel from that person, reading their content, watching their stuff, talking to them. Because if this is somebody you're going to work with on an ongoing basis, for lack of a better word, you kind of want to vibe with them. You want to resonate with them. You want for them to speak to you in a way that clicks and does something for you, right? And every time my gut has told me that something was the right investment for me, I never regret it. Every time that I thought I was missing out on something, and so I overrode my intuition just because it was the trendy thing, it never went well. So, you know, I do think that your gut feeling is leading you in the right direction, and you can trust your intuition on these things. I also think you have to be really clear on what type of support you actually need for the moment that you're in right now. And a lot of people have zero clarity on that. In all honesty, you know, people DM me and send me applications all the time, and I'm more than willing to be in conversation with potential clients. And one of the things that's clear to me is a whole lot of people don't know what they want, don't know what they need, don't know what they're looking for. They're just pressing buttons, shopping around. And so I begin, as from the coach perspective, by asking people to really get clear on that. And if I'm going to make an investment, I'm the kind of person that will show up to a coach I'm interested in working with and say, here's the season that I'm in. Here's what I'm looking for. And does that resonate with you? Does that seem like you're the right person? Do you feel inspired to work together? But I think a lot of people shop around with no clarity.
Right. No, I see a lot of that in my business consulting, where they don't know what the problem is, right? They don't know what they need help with. And
right.
And the coach sounds like the next alternative, or the consultant seems like the next alternative, because it's not going well, and we've got problems, right? And it's
well, and especially in a business realm, there's a lot of people who are not making money, or not making the money they want to be making.
Right.
And so the easy thing to do is to say, well, let me just reach for something, anything that looks like it could make me money. And that is a bad idea, because you got to figure out, what is the issue? Is it a strategy problem? It might be, but could it be a mindset problem? Could it be an internal problem? Could it be a sales problem, right? There could be all sorts of things going wrong. And we can't just reach for this webinar program is going to be the answer. Possibly not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The ClickFunnels isn't going to solve your problem, but usually.
Right. Well, and this is a whole nother discussion, but automating something that currently isn't working is absolutely not going to solve the problem.
Thank you for saying that.
You can't scale zero and get another result besides zero.
That's the takeaway from today right there. How do we, you've written the book, and I'm fascinated by the message in it. You know, how do we, you hear a lot and you read up a lot today about loving yourself more. What do you mean by that? And what is that? How do you do that? I mean, how do you?
Well, here's the thing. I think before before and while and after you have a relationship with anybody else, you have a relationship with yourself. And I think that would include how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you talk about yourself. And, you know, I grew up in church hearing the words of Jesus, love your neighbor as you love yourself. But for a lot of us, if we're honest, if we love somebody else the way we treat ourselves, we're going to treat everybody in our lives badly. And so
you might have just diagnosed the problems in the world today right there.
Well, and listen, you know, from Jesus to RuPaul, which is very on brand for me, but it was RuPaul who says, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else, right? You really cannot bring something to your relationships that you haven't even first given to yourself, right? And that's why I believe not only, you know, self-care has become this idea of, you know, put on an eye mask and watch Netflix. And listen, I love both of those things, but we got to go beyond that to, I really have to take care of myself and support myself so that I'm giving out of overflow to the people in my life. And I'm not drained and depleted and needy going into all my other relationships. And so, you know, I think loving yourself is a journey. It's not a one and done thing. Don't we all wish that there was like a magic pill we could take and that would be it? But all of life, one of my favorite spiritual texts, A Course in Miracles, says that everything is a relationship, right? So you have a relationship to your business, you have a relationship to money, well, you have a relationship to yourself. And it's something you have to work on. It's not a one and done thing, but on a daily basis, engaging with how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you talk to yourself, I think is really important.
Are there things that you do every day that sort of help you, some of your habits that you do that help you do that?
Yeah, I'll share a couple of them quickly. Every morning I start my day on airplane mode, which is a very intentional choice because I refuse to let my email or my pop-up notifications set the tone for the day. And so I start my day on airplane mode, and I have a document on my phone, and it's my daily identity affirmations is what I call it. And it's a whole bunch of I am statements that is the truth about me and what I want to be, what I want to live into today. And so I begin, before I consult, if you will, the outside world, I read that statement every single morning. Another thing I do, I just have a mirror practice. And I try to catch myself, especially when I'm at home and not in a hurry. I try to catch myself every time I'm in the bathroom or in front of a mirror and really just give myself a moment of acknowledgement, look myself in the eyes, really see the love, the infinite, the God within there, and just a moment of acknowledgement, just a moment of showing up for myself and feeling the power that I have. And the other thing is I try to meditate at least 15 minutes once a day, every day. Ideally twice if I can, because I just think there's something to be said for clearing the mental clutter and opening up to something fresh, something new, helping yourself get out of the pattern. So those are three things that I'm pretty committed to, at least at this moment in my life. But I'm also a big proponent of everybody's got to find a routine. Everybody's got to find a spiritual practice that works for them, right? And a lot of people watching and listening, the reason something hasn't worked for you is it just wasn't the right thing, right? Like maybe hot yoga is not your thing. Maybe journaling is not your thing. And I do not believe in a one size fits all practice. I think you've got to find something that works for you. Those are things I do that I offer in case they resonate, but I think you've got to find a practice that works for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're right. I think that's what happens is people try something and it doesn't make them feel good. It doesn't do get the desired result that they were hoping. And so they kind of give up and stop trying on finding what practice or what things help you sort of take it down a notch and be able to think and decompress and take the stress levels down. I think that we all should look for those things that can help us do that. How do we, one of the things you hear a lot about today is authenticity, and you hear that as sort of a buzzword now. But I think in the book you talk about really being ourselves, right? And what's your thought on that? I mean, I think that I remember one of my first management jobs, and my boss saying, well, you've got to have this line between, you and your employees and the people that work for you. And you can't, you have to be this way. And so what that was saying to me was, I can't be my authentic self. I have to be this prescribed. I have to be this person over here that you want me to be. Right. And I can't show people who I really am. I can't be my true self as a manager, which means I'm not going to be the best manager if I can't be who I am, right? And I think that we often lead these lives as sort of in different ways, right? We're this person at work, and then we come home and we're this person with our loved ones and our families. And I was just, how do you think? I mean, how do we kind of break that cycle of living these sort of different lives?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because authenticity, especially right now, people want to achieve through some grand gesture, right? And so they're going to go to Burning Man and they're going to wear an outfit that they would never normally wear, and they're going to post it, and they're, right. And it's funny, even as a gay man, it's interesting because so much of authenticity is perceived to be about the declarations. So you're going to declare to the world, I'm starting a business. You're going to declare to the world that you're sexually fluid. You're going to declare to the world. And I'm not saying, obviously, that there's never a time for a declaration. But to me, authenticity is a very moment by moment, minute by minute thing. So authenticity for me is in this interview with you, not saying an answer that I think sounds good or is what people want to hear, but genuinely sharing the real answer from my heart. That is an in the moment decision to be authentic, right? An authentic decision is not, if you're out with people, not feeling like you have to drink if in that moment you don't really want to drink just because everybody else is doing it. Or, for me, I go to things by myself all the time. I just made my life bi-coastal about a year ago. And so I found myself in a new city and deciding to go to something, even if I didn't have people to go with, but this is what my soul feels like doing right now. You know what I mean? So to me, authenticity is about saying what you really want to say, doing what you really want to do in the moment and honoring that. And it doesn't have to be a grand gesture, but so many of us are out of practice, right? It's all a practice. I use that word very intentionally. I think the Buddhists and the monks are really on to something with this idea of practicing spirituality. And many of us are out of practice. We're used to, well, this is how I show up in front of my uncle and my parents and my grandma, this, that, the other. And we're out of practice from simply honoring what is our truth in the moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you put it like that, because I think you're right. I had never thought about it in the sense of sort of declarations, right? I love the way you sort of illustrated that, because you're absolutely right. It's everyday little actions. It's following your gut, following your heart, following your mind, and trying to be true to that, right?
Yeah, and I think
in the moment. I mean, yeah,
right. And I think this is especially important for business owners. I referred earlier to this idea of living from the inside out, right? Changing your life from the inside out. Even just to give a quick example to all of you out there who have platforms and are posting content, which is probably 95% of you, if not more, right? Maybe 100. Checking yourself to see, am I sharing things from the outside in? Like, what are other people posting? What is the industry doing right now? What is going to make me come across a certain way, right? That outside in approach is inherently inauthentic. And authenticity is not about a buzzword. It's about, what do I want to say in this moment? What do I want to create in this moment? What do I want to share in this moment? And inside out is where all the magic is, where all the power is, where all the fun is.
And the funny thing is, or the true thing is that you said, is that it comes down to decisions in moments. I mean, when you have, when you're trying to make a decision as a business leader or owner, you've got an employee issue, you've got, it all does come down to moments and decisions that you make as to how people react and how people see what you've said or done or whatever as authentic and real. And I look at it as being real as to who you, I mean, I don't know if I like the word authentic, but I like the word real.
Yeah. And I think, as someone that is involved somewhat in different media, television things, it's interesting. People are craving real right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a graphic example to use, but I was watching the third hour of Good Morning America the other day during lunch because it's Michael Strahan, Keke Palmer, Sarah Haynes. I love them. I think they're doing such a good job with it. But they had the sex coach, Dr. Ruth, on, who's a long-time controversial sex coach. And on the third hour of Good Morning America, Dr. Ruth is talking about female masturbation. And Keke Palmer is like, did she just go there? And I'm like, this is Good Morning America. This is not HBO. This is Good Morning America. So we're at a place where people are craving, let's just get real. You know what I mean? People don't like polished. They don't like censored. They don't like artificial and manufactured and edited. People like real in this moment. And I think that's a trend in the right direction.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, yeah. What is, we're getting up into the top of the hour, but I wanted to ask you sort of the last question I always ask guests. What is the best advice you ever got and who gave it to you?
This is not the first time I've gotten asked this question, but I feel like at different moments I've given different answers because different things resonate at different points. In this moment, so you talk about authenticity. What is real for me in this moment? What is accurate for me in this moment? Best advice. I think some of the best advice I was ever given was, in the fullness of who you are is the fullness of everything you want. And I think this goes right along with authenticity. The idea being, don't feel like you have to go chase all of the things you want and force it and grasp at all of them, but rather really, again, from an identity first perspective, really step into the fullness of who you are, of who you feel that you came here to be and what you feel that you came here to do. And in the becoming of that, in the embracing of all that you are, everything flows to you from there. You're led to the right ideas. You're led to the right people. You're led to the right connections and resources and opportunities. But it all comes from, and that's really been my business journey, right? I started it all with a book about finding yourself, loving yourself, and being yourself. And I think when we do those things, we're guided into a path that is so much greater than anything we ever could have imagined. And it affected me deeply years ago to hear Oprah say, God has a bigger dream for you than even you have for yourself.
Yeah.
And in the midst of a lot of spiritual evolution, I stepped into that reality. And, kind of the way The Alchemist puts it, I've stepped into a current that was going to take me places I never could have imagined. And that's the journey we're still on. So cheers to being who you are, and cheers to the dream that is so much bigger than what we could have conceived in our little mind at the time.
So where can people buy the book, and where can they sort of find more information about what you do and how to sort of reach out to you?
Absolutely. So the book is everywhere: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target in particular. If you buy books some other niche place, it's probably there too. But Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target, you're covered there. And then my website is americaslifecoach.us. S after the America, americaslifecoach.us. All the links are there. There's an application to work with me. You can check out my courses, check out my mastermind, check out where to find me on social media, all of that stuff. I have a free masterclass there about 7 reasons that manifesting is not working for you. And if you're ready to go a little bit deeper in this personal growth, spirituality conversation, it's, 50 minutes of value that I think you'll enjoy. So americaslifecoach.us has got it all. You can get to the book there as well.
And the book is called, let's see, How to Find Yourself, Love Yourself, and Be Yourself. And we'll put a link on the feed here for the program. I want to thank Brian Schulman for joining us today, and all the others who joined us online today. I do really appreciate it. Thanks for spending your Friday morning or afternoon, wherever you are, with us and taking part in this program. We do it for you. We do it so that we can all learn together. And I do appreciate it. If you want to find out our schedule for next week and the coming weeks, please check out powerlunch.live, powerlunch.live. You can find the podcast. We convert these into podcasts, and we've started uploading. I think we've got about 15 or 20 episodes up now, and we'll have the other 30 or 40 over the next month or so loaded up. And then you can watch the live broadcast and on the website as well, so you can get to all the content there. We do really appreciate that. If you'd like us to come to your event or your conference, we would be happy to do that, to interview your thought leaders and your speakers. That's something that we do a lot of, and that would be a lot of fun for us. So please reach us through the website or DM me here via LinkedIn, and we can try to set that up. But I do appreciate your time, and your Stefan, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. And have a great day. Great